All right, hi everybody. This is Josh again from the Bean Life Science Museum. And today we are in the insect collection here at the museum. This is our largest collection. And let me get into a little bit more about that in a second. So first, let's define what an insect is. So I'll let you think about that for a second. When you think about insects, what do you think about? What is an insect? I'll give you a second to think. So, an insect is defined as an animal with segmented bodies, and insects typically have three body segments: the head, thorax, and abdomen. They have 6 jointed legs, or they have 3 pairs of legs, and they have an exoskeleton. So basically they have a hard shell around each body part. Rather than having bones on the inside, they have their bones on the outside, and we call it an exoskeleton. It's not made of the same stuff that our bones are made of. It's usually chitin is what it's made of. So that's what defines an insect. Now, there are a lot of insects all over the world, and a lot of different kinds of insects. There are somewhere around 1 million described species of insects. That's a lot of insects. That makes up somewhere around 3/4 of all animal species in the world that we know of. Right? 3/4 of all the animal species are insects. That is a lot of insects. Okay? And in fact, about half of those insects, or close to half of those species of insects, are beetles. Yeah, that's a lot of different kinds of beetles. So, again, there's around 1 million species of insects described, but scientists estimate that there are somewhere between 5 and 10 million species of insects living on Earth today. There's only 1 million that we've described so far, right? But there may be somewhere between 5 and 10 million actual species of insects on the Earth. That is a lot of species of insects. But not only are there a lot of different species, but there are a lot of them, right? So I'll use ants for an example. So you think of one colony of ants, right? That whole colony is a single species, right? But there can be thousands, sometimes even millions of ants in a single colony. And that's a lot of ants. So there are a lot of insects in the world, which make them really cool and really important. Insects do a whole lot of different things in different ecosystems. Some really important functions of insects in ecosystems are pollination. That may be one you're really familiar with, right? What are some examples of pollinators? Can you guys think of any examples of insect pollinators? I can think of a couple really important ones. Bees. Bees are really important insect pollinators, right? Butterflies are also really important insect pollinators. So, and there are a lot of others, lots of flies, ants, moths. There are so many different insects that pollinate plants. Good, so that's one important function of insects. Another important function that some insects serve is decomposing. So insects help to break down dead matter, dead organisms. So when something dies, and you may have seen this before, if you've seen a dead animal, oftentimes there are flies around the dead animal. Right? Flies are attracted to dead animals. And flies, adult flies are attracted to the dead animals because they'll lay their eggs there, and the larvae of the flies, the maggots, will eat that dead animal, right? So those insects help clean up all the dead and decaying organisms, all right, to keep their ecosystems clean. So that's another really important function. And there are a lot of other important functions that and we could go on and on about that all day. Now, so let's see. I've got so many things to talk about. I am not sure where to go next. So, because there are so many different species of insects, right? There are so many different kinds of insects, and because they're very small and fairly easy to catch, right? They are really important for scientists when they're studying ecosystems, because they can tell us a lot about how the ecosystem functions or about the ecosystem's health. Insects are really important to help teach us about healthy water, so healthy streams or rivers. We can tell the health of the streams or rivers by the insects. One of those really important insects, I'll bring some over to you. So an insect here in the western United States that's really important for studying water ecosystems, streams and rivers especially, are stoneflies. So this box here is full of stoneflies. And I'll bring this up a little bit closer so you can see it. If I can get rid of the glare. These are stoneflies. You can see they come in a lot of different sizes. So we have some that are really large and some that are a lot smaller, even as adults. Stoneflies are what we would call an aquatic insect. So the adults lay their eggs in the water, and the larvae, when they hatch, live on the bottom of the stream or river until they become adults. So at that point, they'll crawl out onto usually a rock, which is where they get the name stonefly. The larvae will crawl out onto a rock and then kind of hatch out of their exoskeleton and become these adult flies. So stoneflies are really cool, and stoneflies make up a really big part of our collection here. So here at the Bean Museum, we have over 2 million insect specimens in our insect collection. There are over 2 million specimens here. And that is a lot of insects. But for a long time here at the museum, we've had one of the world's experts in stoneflies, Dr. Bauman, who's now retired, but still comes in to work every once in a while on our stonefly collection. We have thousands and thousands of stoneflies. Some of them are up here, but we also have some stored in our wet collection that's downstairs in our basement, and which we may do a tour of on another day. But we've got a lot of stoneflies. Really, really cool. One of the world's largest collections of stoneflies. Now, I mentioned earlier that beetles make up somewhere around half of all the insect species in the world. That's a lot of beetles. So here I've got one drawer of beetles. So if you watched our other collections tour videos, you'll recognize, or you'll remember that we stored a lot of our specimens in drawers. The same goes here for our insect collection. So this drawer, this is a drawer of some beetles. We have lots and lots of drawers of beetles. And so you'll remember, if you've seen our other collections tour videos, that within these drawers we have all of our specimens, but if you remember the birds or the mammals, there were not nearly as many specimens in each drawer as there are insects. And that's partly because the insects are so small that we can fit a lot of them in a small space. So these are beetles. You can see we have a few different species here. And it may be really hard to see, but on some, or on all of these, underneath, so all of these insects are pinned, so they have a pin going right through them, right? And underneath the insect on the pin are labels. And those labels contain important information, like we talked about in some of our other videos. So those labels will tell us what this is, what that specimen is, what species it is, as well as the date, the location, both the date and the location of where it was collected, as well as who collected it. Oftentimes, with our insects, they'll also have a date for when they were pinned and who pinned them. And that's something important we'll talk about now. So there are a few different ways of storing our collected insect specimens. So with the birds or the mammals, you might remember that we stuffed them with cotton and then laid them flat in the drawers. With the insects, we store them a little differently. Because they're so small and so delicate, we will do one of two things typically. We will pin them, so we will put a small pin right through them, or we will store them in a vial with alcohol in it. Now, when we pin insects, pinning insects is almost an art form in and of itself. So pinning insects, we typically pin them on the right side. So we don't pin them right in the middle because insects are symmetrical. So straight down the middle, just like humans, right? If you were to draw a line right down the middle, we're the same on this side as we are on this side, right? We're symmetrical. I've got one eye here, one eye here, one ear, right? You could just draw a line and we'd be the same on either side. It's the same with insects, but often with the insect's exoskeleton, they're kind of fragile there on that middle line. So if we were to put a pin right through the middle of the insect, oftentimes that insect exoskeleton will just break in half and we won't be able to pin it. So we usually pin just to the right of that line. And on something like a beetle, we'll pin right through the wing case. But if the insect is too small to put a pin through, we will do what we call point mounting. So let me show you another drawer to show you what I mean. This drawer is a drawer of flies. So flies are one of the other largest orders of insects, Diptera. Diptera is the name of the order. I want to show you these here. All right, some of them, like right here, rather than having a pin go straight through the insect, we put a pin through a little piece of paper, a little triangle-shaped piece of paper. And then we glue the insect to the tip of that triangle. It's maybe a little bit hard to see. I'll make sure so you can see these ones up here. Right, they're not pinned directly into the insect, but the pin goes through a little piece of triangle paper, which then the insect is glued to. We have to do that with a lot of insects because they're just too small for the pins. Right, and then again, we also will store insects in vials. Some insects like butterflies, moths, or dragonflies, ones with really large, delicate wings, sometimes we'll also store them in small envelopes, just to help keep them protected. All right, so we talked a little bit, I showed you some flies, I showed you some beetles, and I showed you stoneflies. So stoneflies, even though they're called flies, are not in the same order as most flies, so they're not in the order Diptera. Stoneflies are in the order Plecoptera. Now, let's see. me show you a couple of other orders. So this, you can see, is a drawer full of moths. Moths are in the order Lepidoptera. So they're in the same order as butterflies. Moths and butterflies are all in the same order. And this one, this is a drawer full of ants. And you could probably only barely see them from where they're at. So I'll bring this drawer up close. You can see we have a lot of ants here in this one drawer. There are a lot of ants. And these ants, in fact, are all the same species. So all the ants in this drawer are all just one species. These are the Western harvester ant. They're a really common species here in the western United States. You may have seen them if you ever spent any time walking around sagebrush. They like to build really big mounds and clear out all the space around their mounds. So there will be a big bare patch of soil with an ant mound in the middle, and they'll clear out everything else. Those are Western harvester ants. Really, really cool ant species. All right. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them out. I will try to answer as many of them as I can. And I will also, because we have so much to show you, and I can only bring out so many drawers, I'm going to grab our iPad here and walk around with it and talk a little bit about our collection. So show you some other parts of our collection that we can't see here. So you won't be able to see me, but you'll still be able to see some really cool stuff. And I'll be able to answer some of your questions. All right. Looks like we have Chelsea Adams asked, how many ants are there? So that's a great question. So here in our drawer, sorry, let me flip our camera around here. Okay. I haven't done this yet for our tour, so this is new. Bear with me. Okay. Just in that drawer, it looks like we probably have a couple of hundred, maybe 300-400 ants. Right, as far as ant species in the world, there are somewhere around 10,000 ant species that are described, right? Probably a lot more than that, maybe closer to 15,000, 20,000 different species of ants in the world. And here in Utah, just in Utah, we have around 150 different species of ants. So there are a lot. All right. Are there any other questions? Again, feel free to type them out. So here are a couple of other drawers that I showed you. Now, so you can see here's our insect collection. So it's not really exciting to look at. You can see it's a lot of cabinets, right? A lot of rows of cabinets, but inside all of these cabinets are drawers. So this cabinet here is the one where I pulled out the moths. So you can see we have a lot of drawers all in this one cabinet, and each of these drawers has specimens in it. All right, Ramon de Javier asked, what is my favorite insect? That's a great question. My favorite insects, I guess, are ants. So I spent my master's degree, for my master's degree, I studied ants, where I used ants to study ecology. So I got to learn a lot about ants that I didn't know before. But even still, even after spending a couple of years studying these ants, I've still only scratched the surface of entomology. Entomology is the study of insects, right? There are so many different species of insects. that it's almost impossible to get familiar with all of them. All right, here I'm showing you some vials. Most of these vials are stoneflies. So these are some that are being currently worked on, which is why they're up here. Once they're done being cataloged and organized, they'll go downstairs into our wet collection. Everything that's stored in alcohol in our collections has to be all stored downstairs in a special room. Again, we'll probably show you that room another time. You can see on these vials here, we got a lot of insects all in the one vial. And all of our vials are labeled. You can see these ones, you can maybe read the label. These ones came from Arizona, Greenlee County. All right, it gives it pretty good coordinates. All right, and tells you who collected them and when. Looks like these were collected in May of 1993. All right, Caden Adams asked how many animals are in the museum. We have somewhere around 3 million specimens in our research collections. And then we have a few thousand specimens that we have on either on display or in storage to change out with our specimens that are on display. So we have a lot of stuff here in the museum. Okay. So here, on all of these cabinets, you can see we have them labeled with the order. Sorry, it's a little dark in here, so it's hard to see. But you can see this particular cabinet has several different orders of insects, whereas some of them, like this one, has only one order. And it looks like some of these are... There's just a lot of different kinds, and some of them are unidentified. And this one, they're all the same order, and even in the same family, Formicidae. All ants are in the family Formicidae. All right, we have Kalu and Eliza want to know how many butterflies are there in the museum. You know, I don't even know the answer to that because we have a lot. In fact, let me show you how many we're talking about. So if you've ever been to the museum, you may have seen downstairs we have a cool butterfly display. And on our we have a lot of butterflies all on pins that we put into the shape of a really big butterfly. And that big butterfly is made up of over 1,000 butterflies. Okay, but here in our collection we have even more. Okay, so I'm going to turn this camera back around and show you just how many of our cabinets are full of only butterflies and moths. Okay, so all the cabinets down here on this side, so you could see Lepidoptera, those are butterflies and moths. Okay, so all of these down this row on this side are all butterflies and moths. Oh, excuse me, we got a couple of Hymenoptera. I'm on the wrong, I thought I was on the other row. So, okay, here's butterflies, moths. So those 4 cabinets. Excuse me, I made a mistake. But over on this row, we've got butterflies and moths all the way down the left side. Okay, and then all the way down this right side. Just butterflies and moths. Let's see if we can find some more. Here we go. Again, this row too. So I showed you on both sides here, butterflies and moths. Looks like same both sides here are butterflies and moths. This is the cabinet I showed you a minute ago. So we've got all these cabinets here, all butterflies and moths. Again, we've got a lot. And are there any more? No, I think that was most of them. Looks like there's maybe a couple more on this row. So that is a lot of butterflies and moths. Great question. Are there any other questions? All right, let me show you a couple of other things here. So here in our insect collection, we are constantly adding more. So we have a few scientists who are going out and collecting insects, bringing them back where we identify them and we pin them and put them into our collection. And that all requires a lot of work. So collecting them takes some work, but there's a lot more work even after we collect them. And I'll show you a little bit about, of that process. Okay, now first, we've got Lena Morse Adams says, we've been using a really cool app called Picture Insect, and we go around the yard taking pics with the app and learning the different kinds of insects. That is really cool. Insects are something really cool to start learning about. Again, like the things that I mentioned, there's so many different kinds, even right around your house. I bet anybody that's watching this can go outside right now into their backyard and find 10, 20, 30 species of insects if you were to look hard enough, if you knew where to look. There are so many different kinds right around you, and they're pretty easy to collect. You can make your own insect collections at home, right? And like Lena mentioned, there are some cool apps and other things that you can use to help you identify these insects. Right, there are so many. Okay, so let me turn this camera back around and I'm going to show you a few of the tools and things that we use to help us here identify our insects. Okay, so first we have a lot of microscopes here all over our insect collection. Because the insects are so small, and there's so many of them, right? Because they're so small, it's really hard to identify them just with the naked eye. We have to use a microscope to get really close and see all the little small details that help us identify this insect to species. Sometimes the differences between two species can be really small, like the numbers of hairs on their head, right? Sometimes that is something that could determine which the differences between species. And in order to be able to see that, we need microscopes. Sometimes even really powerful microscopes, much bigger than this one. Okay, and along with those microscopes, usually we will use some kind of lights to help us see them better. Okay, we also have, and I'll show you some of these collections, we have a lot of books and journals. So we've got, not only do we have a lot of cabinets full of insects, but we also have so many books and scientific journals, right, that help us identify these insects. You can see here's a lot more books. Back here we have more books, some really cool old jars. And we've got a lot of stuff up in these cabinets up here. And we've got more stuff. We have so many things. Because there are so many different species of insects, and identifying them can be so tricky. There are a lot of books that talk about even just small families or genera, right? So those books get so specific, and we have to have a lot of different books because there are so many different kinds of insects from all over the world. All right, let's see, let's look at some other things here. So we've got here, these cabinets here are all Diptera, so all flies. Here's some more Diptera. All right, let me see if I can find our light over here to show you a couple other things. All right, here in these cabinets are Orthoptera, which are grasshoppers and crickets. Okay, but you can see we've got, look, here's another microscope. Here's a lamp. Back there is a big walk-in freezer where we'll store a lot of specimens. Okay, but you can see we also have these jugs that are empty now that used to have alcohol in them for helping preserve our insects. We've got a sink where you can see someone just recently washed a bunch of old vials. to be ready to be used again. And we have boxes of new vials. Here's just some vial caps. All right, some other old vials that have been washed. We got a lot of stuff to study these things. It looks like somebody left out a couple of butterflies here. All right, so I've shown you a lot of our insect collection, and there's just so many more things I could show you and so many more things to talk about with insects that we could literally be here all day. And unfortunately, even though I did spend a couple years studying ants, I really don't know a lot about insects. I still have so much to learn because there are so many different kinds. So I think if you guys want to start studying biology, if you guys are interested in studying biology and studying animals, insects are a really cool thing to study because there are so many. They're so easy to get. It's something you could start studying right now. You could have your own insect collection at home, right? You could start learning right now and get going on your own collection, and you could have your collection your entire life. And it doesn't take up very much room, right? It's easy to collect. I think that'd be a great way to start studying biology for you guys out there. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment. We're about to be done right now, but I'll still going through and I'll check the comments over the next few days. So if you guys have any other questions, let us know, and I'd be happy to answer whatever I can. And if I can't answer something, I'll see if I can track down some of our curators or collections managers or entomologists here at the museum who will know the answers. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed our insect collection tour. Stay tuned. Probably next week we'll look at a different collection. All right, everybody, have a good day.